degrees. Tomorrow, Good Friday, sunshine and 72. Tomorrow night, more clouds, a low of 55 degrees. For Saturday, partly sunny, a high of 75. Clouds and some showers. Saturday night with a low of 52 degrees. And then for Sunday, Easter Sunday, a mix of sun and clouds, a few showers and storms with highs of 75. Right now, 60 in St. Peter's, 61 in Florissant, and downtown at the Arch, it's 65. I'm Maria Aquina, KMOX News.
Y98 presents the St. Louis City Soccer Report on America's Sports Voice, KMOX.
Yep, it's the St. Louis City Soccer Report here on KMOX. Jennifer C's here with you solo. Our Nate Gatter, who had a wonderful week last weekend calling NCAA basketball finals. He did such a great job. He's actually landed today in Liverpool. I got a little check on him. Kyle Sixto's on the controls here, and he hadn't had enough time under his belt to start to have fun. So it'll be interesting to hear what adventures Nate Gatter has in Liverpool this week. And then he'll be out again next week. But don't worry, he'll be back. As far as I know, he hasn't abandoned me completely. Jennifer C's here. We got a full 2 hours packed for this show in the 8 o'clock hour, like we normally do. I've got a little thought from Coach Carnell, talk a little bit about the start of the season. Dale Schilly will be alongside at 8:15, like he always does, to give a review/preview of the game. And Josh Yarrow, Santiago Beltran, he's on the KXOK Spanish broadcast. You've also heard him on Flyover Footy podcast. Santiago and I sat down and talked a little bit with Josh Yarrow after practice this week. George Gansner alongside in the 8:45 time slot to talk about laws of the game. A lot has changed. As we know, the referee lockout is over. The PSRA referees will be on the field for the games this weekend in MLS, and looking to see from George, what are some of the things we might see changing with that? Will all of the rule changes when it comes to what they were going to do for this season, when it comes to going on the stadium speaker for VAR announcements, as well as timed substitutions, what might be in place and what might not just yet? In the 9 o'clock hour, we'll talk a little bit. There's a post that I saw that City did with their mental performance coach that is gold. I've reposted it. If you haven't seen it, you need to take a look at it. Mental health, and not just mental health, but mental fitness, mental skills when it comes to any performance are so key. And it's so awesome to know that our pro team in town actually has mental coaching staff. I mean, you do that just like you go do speed training, agility training, foot skills. You go and talk about mental skills to use to have an edge in your game. I'll talk a little bit about that with the watch parties as well going on around downtown. And Kelly Roderick will also be on. I had her in a conversation. She's their sports head of science for St. Louis City. Still the only one head of sports science in the MLS, and she's amazing. And we'll talk a little bit of youth soccer as well on the very end of the 9 o'clock hour, talking with MISA, the Missouri Youth Soccer Association, and a little bit about, if you haven't heard about it, the STL Best 11 on the high school side of the game. So yeah, we'll talk about those kinds of things as well. Wanted to visit a little bit about what Coach Carnell talked about this week in terms of the team's performance. From great news, Tim Parker being at practice, he's progressing. He is roster available for this weekend. Joachim Nilsson and Edward Leuven are a no. There's still probably a couple of weeks out at least in terms of being ready. Good news on Edward Leuven that he has been jogging around, doing some things like that. So that's great. There's going to be some time though, of course, when they come back, just like Tim Parker, he was a neutral. So he had a yellow penny on, which Coach Carnell said was fun because it matched his red hair. That he was a neutral, meaning you're not going to get touched a whole lot. We'll see how you react to being in practice, but it sounds like it's gone well this week. Talked a little bit about Josh Yarrow being the kind of player that we all look to as being a leader. Josh Yarrow has been a leader on this team, and you've seen him when it comes to either being on the bench a leader when if he's not in the game, or even in the locker room leader. He often leads some of the talks that the players will go through. So even though Roman Berkey is the captain, and even though Tim Parker is the vice captain, there are lots of leaders on the team, and Josh Yarrow is one of them. It was nice to see Josh get his first professional goal and at City Park against DC United this last weekend. Talked a little bit about Ostrak also kind of coming along and getting more minutes and seeing about him being developed in the game. And there was a point that Coach Carnell was asked, and the players have talked about it a lot this week because the media asked a lot about it, was the fact that the team is undefeated so far. So undefeated, which is important. It's an important mindset to have. They are unbeaten at this point in time, but yeah, they have had a lot of ties under their belt at this point, and it's definitely not something that they are fond of. They are not looking to keep tying games, but a point is a point. We are happy to get points when we can get points, but that the win is always desirable. But I want to pose an idea that something is not so bad in the way that City has started, because there's a lot of people I see in the social groups as well as in media asking constantly about these ties. It's not bad to have a start like we did. Now, I would not trade starting the season like we did for St. Louis City's first ever season in the MLS, first ever time St. Louis has had a pro team in town. I wouldn't change that kind of whirlwind 5-win start. I wouldn't change that for the world. But if you remember, when we get into the postseason, necessarily having that kind of start does not translate necessarily to postseason. Sporting KC, our rivals across the state, had a much different start to their season. It was not as pretty, but they peaked at the right time, and they came into the postseason on an up. They came into the postseason ready to roll. Unlike City, who came in with a little bit of a dip in performance, a little bit of time off where they weren't performing, they weren't coming in the way. So I just like to propose that grit and resilience met early on with, gosh, I don't even know if you can call it failure. I mean, they haven't lost. They certainly don't look at some of the ties as wins, but having some of that resistance and having to tweak things early on in your season is something that can be a good thing, and learning not to lose and then tweaking it in a way that helps you to win. Kyle, were you able to find that? Great. Coach Carnell has talked a little bit about losing versus winning and what it's going to take for the team.
We worked so hard the last couple of weeks to get points on the road. We want to make these games count at home, and we feel a little bit disappointed that we couldn't get 2 extra points here at City Park. But it is what it is. I think we're playing some really attractive soccer at the moment, so we just have to clean up a few things and move on. So we're ready to go again.
And he went on to say later in that clip that they've worked really hard on not losing, right? We've had City come back in the last couple of games, giving us crazy highlights that we try to cut at the very end of a game, coming back, with Celio scoring in 90+3, I think it was, and then St. Louis City recovering for a tie. The team knows how to come back. So that is grit, right? That is resilience. And I would much rather be at this point in time and trying to tweak as a coach to just make sure that we have that win at the very end than I would any other way. So that's some thoughts from Coach Carnell, and some of the things that he shared at practice with us this week, that not losing is fine. We're going to fine tune certainly to get those wins, but that not necessarily having 5 wins in a row and having that crazy fun time we all had last year may not be the best way to enter the postseason. Maybe this is exactly the grit and the challenge the team needs to put it forward for the rest of the season as we get closer to the end of the season. I'm Jennifer Cease. More to come. Dale Schilly, City Academy Director and analyst on Y98. He's going to share with us some thoughts on the last game and the next game up next on the Soccer Report on KMOX.
For everything online, it's Odyssey.com.
From PassItOn.com.
The Y98 St. Louis City Soccer Report continues on America's Sports Voice, KMOX.
Jackson runs over. Vassilev serves. Out
Get in there.
Yarrow, he got it, baby! Header goal! City leads!
That was Josh Yarrow getting his first goal, his first professional goal of MLS, first professional goal of all time. So great to see Josh Yarrow. And we'll hear a little bit later from him at the bottom of this hour how, that play wasn't even meant for him. It wasn't designed for him. He happened to be at a place and Alex Langer had told him to be ready. And he was sure ready, Dale Schilly.
Never say it wasn't designed.
But he said, I had told him, I said, you're supposed to say that you planned to do that all along.
Yeah, you know what? Whether he was in the right place at the right time, but that near post area like that's a difficult one to defend because when the ball's driven, it's too hard for the goalkeeper to come and get it. And Josh was in the right spot and just redirected it, and it's hard for the goalkeeper to deal with it. And he headed it down, made it even all the more difficult.
And you've talked about that before, that when you're going to redirect a head ball and you redirect it, of course, away from the goalkeeper and down is, of course, better.
Yeah, if you can really, in the old school days, it was, can you hit the chalk with your header so you can knock it down by the goalkeeper's feet? So, yeah, it bounced in and hit the net. So, well done by Josh.
So it was interesting to hear Dale being on the field with Coach on Tuesday, and he was on the press conference, of course, today, and a lot of questions. I should have kept a tick sheet about how many times he was asked about consistently tying. And I thought I would call that out because City's undefeated and has been on a tying. We've definitely come from behind. The team knows how to make it an exciting finish, but that, he said he would rather be in this position of making these little tweaks we've learned how to not lose, and let's tweak it so that we start on the winning portion of the game.
Yeah, it's early in the year, and we go through the Champions Cup where we've got the congested schedule, 3 games in 8 days. I think we end up with 4 games in 11 days. We get some injuries. Considering where the roster sat with the injuries that we had and where they were on the field, I would take a point in every single game that we get. Getting a point in Austin, getting a point in LA are, great results. Obviously, you like to get 3 points at home. You like to do it for the 3 points. You like to do it for the fans. But let's not look a gift horse in the mouth. Let's take the point, continue to work hard, and find our way to get the 3 the next time around. But for now, take the point. We're starting to get healed. Guys are starting to get back. We'll see what happens when we're all healthy.
Yeah, and he talked a little bit about the fact that Tim Parker was a neutral on Tuesday, and he's progressed enough to be potentially roster available for the weekend. Good timing, because Joachim Nilsson will be out for a couple of weeks. Going up against Benteke is a pretty hard job. I know that Joachim was nursing a rib not feeling good anyway, but it turns out it is broken.
Yeah, look, Benteke is a tough character, and the way that DC United utilized him by playing every restart ball from the back half of the field into his head. For the most part, he was lined up with Josh Yarrow, but every ball it was that Benteke won, and he won a good number of them, turned into second balls and 50-50s because he's not going to be able to redirect it right to somebody's foot. So that was a real battle for the center back. He's a tough character to deal with, particularly in this league, despite him being 33 years old. He was a good player.
Yeah, and I wanted to revisit. I didn't have it because you and I were actually in the booth together. Wanted to check in on your 3 things. It's one of the favorite things that you do that I have. How did the team come together when it came to looking back on those 3 things for the particular game with DC United? And of course, high energy, high pressing game from 2 teams that like to move quickly. And of course, teams that are formerly playing, Chris Durkin playing an old team, and then St. Louis City seeing Bartlett and Jared Stroud on the field.
Yeah, I think I think that in terms of just the way that the game was going to be played, or the way the game played out, where it was just 2 pressing teams going at it, really battling each out. How were we going to deal with a team that pressed so much? I thought we did okay. We created a number of chances. I don't know that we knew that the game was going to be that disjointed. I also didn't know I don't think that we recognized or realized how direct DC United was going to be. So it was hard for us to establish any sort of real press because they just did not play out of the back half of the field. Every ball seemed to go either into Benteke or into a corner flag. So I think, from that perspective, I thought it was, from a pressing side and dealing with the press, I thought we did okay. Just difficult to recognize how they were going to play.
Yeah, and so we look forward to the game. You and Joey will be the game. I believe is at 8:30. Pregame on Y98 at 8 p.m. You and Joey will be out at Real Salt Lake for a matchup that seems awful quick, doesn't it?
Yeah. The turnaround to play RSL again is quick, and they're good. Luna, Arango. Now Barajas, I watched him the other day. Barajas is a 17-year-old that I think was in the San Jose Earthquake youth system, left and went to Charleston in the USL, and now is in the MLS. He's a 17-year-old. He was quite good. Got 2 assists the other day in a 10-minute stint in the second half. He hit the goalpost and the crossbar. Slight technical. Lefty, really a nice player. He's going to be a star in the league if he stays in the league.
Yeah, and Real Salt Lake at this moment sitting in the number 5 spot of the Western Conference. It's so funny, Dale. I'm looking at there's 7 teams on 7 points, all in the 3 to 8 slot, where St. Louis City is in 8th place, but everybody's on 7 points, and I think only 1 or 2 of them, Houston and Vancouver, have a game in hand. So it could be quite an interesting weekend to take a snapshot of this and see where teams wind up at the end.
Yeah, and I would say RSL is like I said, they're a good side. They're going to be in the home field playoff hunt at the end of the year. Remember Gomez, the wide right player, is super pacey. Luna can play wide left and come central, very skillful. Arango can score goals. They're good in possession, and they're really good on the repress because they get so many numbers around the ball when they're in possession. When they lose it, they're in position to try to get it back again. So it's going to be an interesting game. They're a good side. They repress slightly different than us, but still with the same intention.
Well, the news we had that broke, of course, this week was that the lockout's over. So the regular referees, the PSRA referees, will be back on the field. George will be going over who exactly the crew will be for that game. As I understand it, we may not fully have all the rules being enforced, the new ones that were coming in terms of substitution time. We may have VAR that we hear when a VAR is review. We might hear that in the stadium. But maybe general thoughts as to how this may affect all the games coming in with the PSR tenured referees that maybe don't necessarily fall for time wasting and things like that.
Yeah, I think one, like we've talked about before, just the standard that the referees are brought in under now gets reestablished, so that's important. And then I think just the reaction from the players is going to be different because there's a different level of respect for the guys that they're dealing with. The coach or the referees have gone through their battles to be where they are. So they've seen the tricks of the trade, whereas the guys may have been able to pull a few tricks on the guys we had in before. And no slight on the replacement referees. The league needed them. They stepped up. I'm sure it wasn't comfortable for them. But now it's good to get the first line referees back and have them start to bring some more normalcy back to the game.
All right, and real quick update on Academy. I wanted to get that real quick because I think right after the last game you left for Dallas. Were you were here the whole time?
Yeah. I just got back from Dallas late night, and Jen, it was a good experience, which means we didn't win our games that we wanted to, but still a great experience.
When a coach says that, you know what the result is.
Yeah, this is with the oldest team. This is with the under-20s. We played in the super group, and we tied Santa Laguna, a Mexican professional club, 2-2.
Wow.
We lost to Midtjylland, who were last year's champions and Danish champions as well. We lost to them 1-0, a 0-0 at halftime. Really good game. And then yesterday we lost to Botafogo from Brazil, 6-3 in a game that we needed to win to advance. So we had to open up a little bit, and just really high level of competition. I can't even describe to listeners how high of a level it was, and just a really great stressor for the players to just see them deal with stress. The level that they're against, the style of play, the culture puts some demands on players that makes it difficult for them. And as a club that's trying to find the ones who can take the next step, we have to see them in as many difficult situations as we can. And we got to see it this weekend, this week.
Great exposure. Well, Dale, I look forward to hearing from you and Joey on Saturday night on Y98.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dale. That's Dale Schilly, City Academy Director, and you'll be hearing him at 8 o'clock pregame for Y98. St. Louis City takes on Real Salt Lake. Joey and Dale will be in Salt Lake to call that game. More to come on the St. Louis City Soccer Report right here on KMOX.
Hey guys, Glover here from my friends at ThrottleNet.
Odyssey app, or your favorite podcast platform. Stay connected with your team. Cardinals Conversations, where the Redbird talk never stops.
Welcome back on the St. Louis City Soccer Report on KMOX. Well, earlier this week, Jennifer Cease here with you, by the way. Nate Gatter will be back in a couple of weeks. He's enjoying his time in Liverpool, not for business, for pleasure. I would assume he's going to catch a game of some sort and report on that. So it'll be good to hear from him and check in maybe next week and see how that has gone. Today, actually earlier this week, it's Santiago Beltran, who is on the KXOK Spanish broadcast. They do a great job on City games. He calls the play-by-play there, also on the Flyover Footy podcast with Matt Baker. Santi and I had a chance to talk a little bit with Josh Yarrow after practice this week. Congratulations on your goal. First of all, professional goal. And I would like to point out that you don't need red hair to score a corner kick, head ball.
Apparently not. But yeah, no, that was an exciting time for me just to be able to get my first MLS goal and also my first goal for the club. The guys have been really nice about it, making the moment feel really special for me.
Right down in that lower right corner. Did you know exactly where you're going to go with it?
Indy put in a really good ball. It was almost a perfect ball. All I had to do was just redirect it. And when the ball comes in perfectly and there's power on it, all you have to do is just redirect it. And most of the time, if it's on target, it's going to be a goal. So thank you, Indy, for the assist.
Josh, what goes through your mind when a set piece calls your name and you know that it may come to you?
When you're in the box, anything is possible. You have to be ready because even if you're not the target of the ball, it can always bounce and come to you. And so the play was designed not to come to me. But the day before, Alex was just telling me, be ready. It could fall to you. And that's exactly what happened.
How special was it for you to score at City Park?
And it's a special moment, and I'm not going to deny that. And it would have been a lot more special if we had gotten the win. But it's a special moment in my life because you only get your first MLS goal. But now, I just build on it. But definitely a day that I will always remember in my life.
Can you talk about how this season has gone so far with so many injuries, center backs? How has it been so far for you?
Obviously, I've had my injury as well. So out for 2 weeks. And I think the center back position has been hit with a lot of injuries. But we've always had someone to step up and play. And I think everyone that has stepped in and played has done really well. It's a good group. It's a group that fights, a group that's, really together. And, our goal is to always give our best when we're in the field. And I think this is a good group to really get the best for the team.
All the guys in this team are great. But if I think of next man up, it is Josh Yarrow. Time and time again, you've either stepped in as a starter when somebody gets hurt, or you step in maybe 60 minutes in or whatever the sub time is. How do you prep differently for those kinds of things?
Yeah, the thing is, you always have to be ready. And I think it's just a mindset because some people, when they're not starting, it's like, oh, I'm not playing. And the mentality is different. For me, even if I know I'm not starting, when we're doing the rep work, I make sure that I tune in because anything can change at any moment. That happened with the LA Galaxy game. Flew to LA and I didn't know I was going to start the game until the day of the game. You have to be ready. You have to be tuned in 2 days, 3 days, the whole week, And so just mentally preparing yourself because I think physically, you can do the work. You know that you're a good player, you can step in and play. But mentally, if you're not ready, you're going to get crushed. And I think for me, I've always tried to prepare on the mental side, tune in and prepare myself and see because anything can happen. There can be an injury in the first minute of the game. Or you might need to come on as a third center back or whatever it is. Just making sure that when I'm called on, that I'm ready.
I asked Samuel Adeniran the same thing last week because he's done both roles as well. And he also talked about the mental side. And then physically, it's obviously different when you have the warm up before the game. That's a whole lot different than warming up on the sideline or the end line physically.
It is. And I remember the Salt Lake game when I came into the game, it's like it didn't even get the time to properly warm up. And you're going, okay, it's not the same. Because when you have a full warm up before the game, your body's ready, you feel ready, you're good to go. And then when you start with everyone else, so everyone is playing themselves into the game. But when you come into the game, everyone is already here and you have to catch up to that tempo. And it can be really difficult sometimes, especially as a defender. Because I think attacking players are used to that. But as a center back, most of the time, if you're not starting, you might not come into the game. And so it's tough that way. But you have to find ways and means to make sure that you're putting the best foot forward.
How has the partnership with Joakim Nilsson been for you? You guys played together the last couple of games.
Yeah, no, it's good. I think we complement each other well. Like I said, every center back pairing that we've had has been good because at the end of the day, it's just finding out what the other person's strengths are, finding out how they can complement you in many ways. And I think we work well together. I've enjoyed it so far as I have with other partnerships I've had on the team. So really fortunate to have as many good center backs as we have on the team.
Real Salt Lake coming up. It feels kind of weird to already have a rematch, but in Salt Lake, you guys had an incredible result there last year. Real is a different team. St. Louis City is a different team. And we came off a different game than you're likely to have at Real. Any thoughts about the upcoming match?
Yeah, it's going to be tough. You look at how well they've done so far and when they came here in the opening weekend. But we also know as a team, we've grown in many ways. Should be an exciting match. We're going there to get the full 3 points, and it will be a fight. But if there's any team that I'll back to win that fight, it's us.
I know we have ties, but it's still undefeated. That matters, doesn't it?
It does, because every point is vital. I said this after the game, that it might look like it's ties, and people might be frustrated, oh, we're dropping 2 points. But it's going to get to a point where in postseason that you're going to look back and go, wow, that tie that we had, it's what made the difference. Because 1 point could be literally the difference between hosting a playoff game and not. So players sometimes were frustrated that we don't get the full 3 points, but we also know that every point, it's a good point. And those points are hard to get. Yeah, we take it. And we learned the lessons from whatever happened in the game. And I definitely appreciate the points we've had. And I think it's going to serve us well down the line.
The team has come back from losing positions a few times and scoring in the last minutes of the game. What's different this year compared to last year?
It's just the mentality. We've kind of embodied the mentality that unless the whistle blows, the game is not over. And as long as the game is not over, you can always fight for something, even if it's like 30 seconds left in the game. And we've done that really well this season. And that's a trait that if you have, is going to serve you well. Because, what if these were playoff games and you have to come up with a goal or tie a game to take to extra time, whatever the case may be. So it's a good mentality to have. It's a mentality that we don't obviously want to rely on too much, only do it when we really have to. But so far, I'm proud of the guys for the resilience and the character, we've all shown in those games.
Josh Yaro talking with Santiago Beltran and myself after, I think it was Tuesday's practice this week. And he said it right there at the end, if you didn't catch it. If there are 30 seconds left in the game, the game's not over. And I'll tell you what, I think that is a mentality this team has always had. But if anything, by not getting the wins they've wanted just yet, that mentality, when the game is not over until the final whistle, is a good one to carry along the way. And I think will serve them well in the rest of the season and into, hopefully, a longer postseason than City had last year. More to come. A lot of happenings and changes with Laws of the Game with George Gansner. He's up next on the KMOX Soccer Report. Coming up next.
Rhino Shield is far superior to even the best traditional exterior house.
St. Louis City Soccer Report continues on America's Sports Voice, KMOX.
Everyone's trying their best. The teams that we had here before, and just think without them, there was no soccer happening. We made a plan, we made it work, we just move on, and everyone's trying their best to put the product forward, and we move on.
That was Coach Carnell talking about the fact that the lockout's over. The replacement refs were on the field. The PSRA refs will be back, and it's that time.
Now, laws of the game.
George Gansner, former FIFA MLS referee, joins us now. George, I don't know if you heard the clip from Coach Carnell, but talked a little bit about how, listen, it's time to move on. They did the best they could on the field. We did the best with the situation, and now we're moving on. And I would assume that the PSRA referees are ready to move on as well.
Yeah, they are. They're really excited to get back on the field. The CBA was ratified on Monday. It was voted for and then ratified on Monday. About midnight Eastern time is when the vote ended, and shortly after 11 o'clock Central, which is the same time, I started getting text messages and that it had passed, and that for the most part they're happy. There are still some unhappy people, but that's the collective voted to move on. And the unhappy people are more unhappy about health insurance type things, stuff like that, maybe assistant referee pay. But the worst part about it is it's a 7-year contract. The best part about it is they got the $2.8 million out of MLS that they said would end the deal. So they did. So they're ready to go. They've been training. They're fit. Drew, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting Drew's last name, but Drew Fisher. Drew Fisher is the referee for the St. Louis RSL game on Saturday night. Drew just refereed the Mexico-U.S. Nations League final. So he's fit and ready to go.
Great. And then you said, I think Corey Rockwell will also be on the game?
Corey Rockwell is the most experienced assistant referee in the league, and he has also been assigned the game. And so I know he's fit as well. I mean, that guy is always fit. He's one of the fastest people still, even at, I think he's 48 years old. And he runs, like a 4.840. So, it's
so
incredible.
He can keep up with a guy like Paintsel.
he can way better than I could when I was finished.
So let's go back in time a little bit. So we know we're going to get the referees last game. Last game we had DC United, we had St. Louis City, and we already knew the talk the whole week was how much energy this game was going to have for multiple reasons. The styles of the team. We've got former teams, former players from teams, and also you kind of know when a substitute teacher's in the room, right? We know that from school. It's the kids know when it's not the same kind of person there, and on the field that the referees are different. Were there any times in this game or even others where we're having seasoned professionals who've been doing this for a long time, maybe players don't take advantage of certain things, or I mean, sometimes we had things in favor of City as well.
Yeah, that's a fact, right? It didn't all go against St. Louis City. So, there were things like there was an offside decision that Chris Durkin was called offside on a pass from Totland, and he's clearly not offside, right? That's inexperience of a young assistant referee. Dale mentioned it before. A lot of the antics on time wasting from early in the first half, they started time wasting. Those types of things are not going to get by on seasoned referees. And, what we have to look forward to is things like flow of play that most fans won't even notice. And that's exactly what's supposed to happen. They won't notice that things didn't necessarily get called or not called on the field in a certain way. There are other things that we're going to continue to yell about. There are going to be errors. We're going to critique them on this show. And we're going to, move forward and hopefully have some fun, but the games will be much more enjoyable to watch now that the players will stop messing around. To Dale's point earlier, they respect these guys. They know who they are. They're part of the game, they're part of the show, and it's a much better environment to be in.
So tell me what particularly changes. So let's go to the second half, right? Second half of St. Louis City and DC United, which at least felt more than the first half like time wasting. You can see the players getting visibly frustrated with that. How does a seasoned referee crew handle that versus people who are new coming in that still have to learn those skills?
That's a great question. And so what they'll start with is they'll start having conversations with players on the field. You won't even notice it. And they'll start to tell them, hey, pick it up. We're not going to keep doing this. then they'll make it more visible, where they'll maybe blow the whistle, tell them to get going, maybe show that's enough, like throwing your arms out, almost like a safe sign, that's enough. And then eventually they'll get to the point where they'll start bringing out yellow cards. The likelihood that it gets to a red card is slim and none. You have to be smarter than that. You don't give a player who's already on a yellow card for time wasting, unless it's so egregious that player's done it, that you have no choice. But there will be a progression. There will still be time wasting, probably from St. Louis as well, if it's the right thing for them to do. But the referees will manage it in a much better way that won't turn into the farce that happened this past Saturday against DC United.
There was a particular call you and I were talking about that you said, and Matt Pauley, I think, fairly asked me this question as Sports Open Line ended, and I didn't have a straight answer for him, to be honest with you, because I don't know that anybody, Coach Carnell wouldn't do it, none of his staff would do it, the players wouldn't do it. We'll draw a line from this particular call being one way or the other to us getting or not getting a goal. But you were talking about a particular offside and corner kick that a little while later does lead to a goal. Could you walk me through that?
Yeah, I don't remember the minute, but it was the second goal that DC United scored. So St. Louis is attacking in the DC end. They're attacking on goal.
Yeah, so Benteke scored in the 38th minute to make it 2-1.
Okay, so that's the minute. So it's in the first half.
Yeah.
So, but it's still at a point in the game where things changed. And so St. Louis is attacking. There's a ball that goes out of play over the goal line. It hits off of, and it's a difficult decision. I'm not going to take that away from the referee, but it should have been a corner kick, and he gave a goal kick. And a minute and a half later, the players have to defend. I'm also not taking that and blaming the referee that the players didn't defend, but a minute and a half later, DC United comes and scores a goal, their second goal, right? So those kinds of things, and those, to be fair, those errors are still going to happen. They're just not going to happen as often. And the likelihood, that's the second or third time, I think it's the second time for St. Louis City, that within a minute and a half of a decision, ball in and out of play, that a goal has been scored against St. Louis City. In the Kansas City-Philadelphia game a couple of weeks ago, it was a very clear mistake by the referee. Philadelphia picked up the ball, threw the ball in, went down and scored, and took 2 points away from Kansas City. I suppose we like that in St. Louis, but at the end of the day, that's not the right thing for the game, right? So those are the types of things that'll get managed better.
So talk to me a little bit about the rules that were supposed to be put in place, changes to how the game was called, the VAR going up on the stadium speaker. What are the things that are going to be in place this weekend, and then what's coming?
So I don't know. I haven't seen anything official about that yet. What I suspect will happen is at a minimum we'll see the VAR decisions explained, right? So it's a little bit like the NHL, where when they put somebody into the penalty box, the referee explains what the decision is.
So they go on the speaker of the stadium itself, and which also then pipes into the TV feed and probably maybe the radio feed. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So everybody should know, like it or not, everybody should know what the decision is. The other two things that were really important were injuries. So a player has to come off for 2 minutes if there's an injury. That was supposed to go into play this year. And then for substitutions, if a player's not off the field within 10 seconds, the substitute has to wait a minute or so before they can come on the field. So
that's a lot of management. Is that fourth official management, by the way?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. But I don't know if those are going to get implemented. So we're 6 games into the season, and those have an impact on how the game is played. So I don't know whether or not those will get implemented. It'll be interesting to see if they do. At the end of the day, they're all good for the game. We'll see if they do it or not.
What is your, with about 30 seconds left, what are your hopes for PSRA referees coming back onto the field, and the referees that did step in, what happens to them?
Yeah, so they'll go back to those referees will go back to the leagues that they were refereed in before. And remember, that's 2 and 3 and 4 tiers down. My hope for the referees that are on the field now, again, for the rest of the season, they're going to be there 7 years. They will settle in very quickly, and I'm sure we're going to see something that's a lot more fun than we've been watching the last 6 weeks.
Well, I know you'll feel that way for sure. George Gansner, former FIFA and MLS referee, thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you next week about more laws of the game.
Thanks, Jen.
All right. That was George Ganser. We had a busy hour. Heard from Dale Schilly, talked to Josh Yarrow. George talked about the referees, heard a little bit from Coach Carnell. More to come, though. Hour 2 has a lot. We're going to talk about those watch parties that you might be at around St. Louis, about the mental side of the game, Kelly Roderick, and the youth sports side of the game here in St. Louis. Stay with us for hour number 2. That's coming up next here on KMOX.
Jules on Hampton in St. Louis Hills is paying some of the highest prices on gold.
Degrees in St. Peter's, 58 in Florissant, and downtown of the Arch, it's 60. I'm Maria Aquina, KMOX News.
Y98 presents the St. Louis City Soccer Report on America's Sports Voice, KMOX.
Welcome back into the St. Louis City Soccer Report. Jennifer C's here with you. Kyle Sixta on controls. Nate Gatter, he's out this week. And I'm flying solo. We're talking a little bit of soccer. We spent all of the 8 o'clock hour talking about City, as we always do, from Dale Schilly's analysis to hearing from a player. This time was Josh Yarrow. What a great time to hear from Josh. First professional goal of his career, and then give a little bit more time to George Gansner. So for all the haters out there, Ted Williams, stop texting me. I gave him extra time this week to talk about laws of the game and all the changes that we're going to see coming up with the PSRA referees taking over the fields again and doing what they love to do all the time with the players, and St. Louis City taking on Real Salt Lake in Salt Lake, 8 o'clock pregame on our sister station Y98. And 8:30 start for that game. I'll be in the Y98 studios. Joey Zanaboni and Dale Schilly will be on the call in Real Salt Lake. So before we get to the second hour, we're going to talk a few more things, a little bit more from St. Louis City. And then on the youth side of the game, I want to focus there. Wanted to talk about a few things. One that's near and dear to my heart, something that St. Louis City posted. It's on their Facebook. It's on their Twitter. You can find it. And I'm going to read it a little bit from it here. Their director of mental performance, Dr. Greg Young, talked a little bit about adding some performance superpower to your mental skills toolbox. And I love this for a number of reasons. One, there was a focus this week, and there should be more weeks on the mental health side of the game. We know we have unfortunate, very sad stories kind of coming up sometimes from pros down to youth players that are not mentally healthy when it comes to how they approach the performance side of their game. So the mental health portion of it needs attention, but also the fact that mental is a skill. I teach that with my own business Mind to Define with sports, and I work with younger players than these pros. But it says something when a pro team has their own person on staff or people on staff that talk. Actually, I pass that office. If you go into St. Louis City's training facility and you take a right and then you take a left to go to Dale Schilly's office, you will pass by the mental coach's office. And I'm guessing that is where Dr. Greg Young sits. And so not only does he talk about the mental health side of the game, but in this little 2 minutes and 15-second clip that you can find on Twitter, again, on Facebook, just follow City, he says to harness the superpower of your self-talk. And that is one of the skills we teach as well on the youth portion of the game, is that you are constantly talking to yourself in performance. Even the players who will tell me, well, I tell myself not to think, you are thinking not to think. And the power of self-talk to build your game and the power that it has to detract from your game. And he gives some great advice on how to think about your self-talk, how to be aware of your self-talk, and how to maybe check your self-talk so that you are utilizing it in a way that gets you to the next right thing that you want to do. So it's really important. I highly recommend listening and learning from Dr. Greg Young as well. Wanted to call out the fact that March 30th, we continue to celebrate Women's History Month with a special watch party at City Park. I will tell you, it's sold out. So I'm so glad that this sold out. Saturday the 30th. It'll start at 7:30. So hopefully they'll tune in Y98 inside as well as watch the game. Real will take on St. Louis. The Minetta Pitch Club at City Park will have food and drinks, $30. They did this last season towards the end. We had some watch parties here and there, and then for the end of the season as well. And I love that they're doing this for Women's History Month. And I hope that they do many more of these. What a great reason to gather with people. I mean, sometimes I like to watch the game, from the comfort of my own home, but sometimes it's nice to get out with people and have a good time. And so they're doing that. And again, it's sold out. So that's great. And at the same time, I was looking a little bit around and seeing that there's a bunch of other watch parties kind of being called out throughout the area, which I love that is going on. City's own City on Tap tracks different restaurants that have street teams to watch the party. This particular one, I think, is at Henke's Tavern, which is on Lafayette. They have different partner bars. If you go to stlouiscitysc.com and go to Ultra City on Tap, you can find it's a great kind of one-stop shop to find what the specials are, what these different places are, from Cyberg's on Market to Llewellyn's Pub to Buffalo Wild Wings to different Dukes and Soulard, all around the St. Louis area, places that you can go. And then the city supporters groups also, I kind of went out real quick to their Twitter pages to see what I could find. And sure enough, St. Louis Santos, every Saturday, they have a watch party for the games that are away. I believe this last one they had was a Fiesta football at the Pepper Lounge. I'm looking to see if they have a new one in place. But St. Louis Santos has a supporters section that you can go to, not only at the stadium, but also around the St. Louis as well to watch the games. The Luligans will be, it looks like, at Second Shift Brewing on Saturday for the game in Utah. They'll be watching it there. So if you want to watch with friends, the Luligans will be there. And the St. Louis City Punks looks like they will be at I'm looking, I think it's Eat Crow, formerly Crowbar. They will be there having their watch party. So highly recommend, you can look up St. Louis City supporters groups and then you can find them. If you can't just Twitter or Facebook them, you can find them, and they're really good about posting where they're going to be. And all the supporters groups are very welcoming for people that want to get to know, what is it all about? What is it like to be a supporter? They're all a little bit different from each other, but they are united in their love for St. Louis City, and they certainly get together to celebrate that. So I recommend looking up these supporter groups and maybe heading out instead of watching from your couch at home and being with some fun people. I myself will probably be with Kyle. You and me, Kyle, will be over at the Y98 booth just across here at Odyssey Studios and running the game from there while Joey and Dale are on the call. So more to come. Definitely check out the watch party, as you can check out different places to go around town to have a good time and feel not quite like you're at City Park, but at least with the people that love the game as much as you do. More to come. We're going to hear from Kelly Roderick. She is the head of sports science for St. Louis City SC, and she works those guys out every day at practice here on the St. Louis City Soccer Report on KMOX.
Okay, I'm ready to record my jewelry store's new radio spot.
Y98 St. Louis City Soccer Report continues on America's Sports Voice, KMOX.
Welcome back. Jennifer Cease here with you. Hour number 1 down, hour number 2 almost halfway through. We're going to pick it up now with Kelly Roderick. Kelly Roderick is the first female head of sports science in Major League Soccer. I do believe she still is the only woman in that role right now. And although it's funny, I see her every practice. You sometimes don't notice her because she's kind of in the background doing her thing, but she has a very big impact on the guys and the game and how they train, and is just a wealth of knowledge when it comes to the science behind the sport. I see you every practice and you're out there and you've got usually a pad. There's some device that I used to think was like a video camera. I really don't know what it does. What is it that you are actually doing in practices, in games with your equipment?
So basically, I mean, my role is to optimize both performance on field and in the gym through scientific knowledge and technology. So some of the things that we are tracking when it comes to those beacons, basically just help the GPSs communicate to the iPad so that I can see the data live, which is really all that is. So it's kind of like a giant antenna.
All the guys are wearing something on them to connect to that. Right?
Exactly.
Okay.
So that's what I'm looking at with the iPad, and being able to break down the drills and see what the different loads are, and tracking sprinting and HML and all the different things that we can see.
So after practice today, I walked down, I was like, okay, this is one of those intense practice days, but now they're sprinting at the very end. Is there a measurement you get? So they've worked all this time and now they're giving you one more sprint?
Yeah, so we're able to get a top speed measurement from that. So we're looking at trying to get within their 90% and above range on a weekly basis before the game. That's what we are doing, but they're very competitive and just want to see what they got. That's it.
I saw Klaus and Tim racing.
Yeah, they think they're going a lot faster than they are most of the time.
Like you got more in the tank.
Yeah, exactly.
What does life look like after practice?
Trying to hunt down all the players and get their pods.
Oh, get what they wear.
Yes.
So let me go back a little bit. What gets somebody into sports science? How'd you get into this?
It was kind of surprising for me. I started off obviously as an athlete, as most of us do. And then I got into coaching. I got injured and got into coaching. And that was really the pathway that I took through strength and conditioning. And I always liked science and been very much on the side of, looking at all the different variables. I like to be able to understand what's going on and why it's happening. So that really just combined both of those things. And soccer is a wonderful sport to work with when it comes to sports science and strength and conditioning. So it's definitely exciting on a daily basis.
I read in your bio that there's sometimes that you're making real-time decisions, maybe even in games and practices.
Yeah, so you're always going to have subjective and objective markers that you're looking at. So some of the daily questionnaires, whether it's asking them questions on how they feel versus the actual objective data that we're measuring on a daily basis or twice a week. So we look at a lot of different measurements before they even step onto the field. And so that gives us an idea of where they're at physiologically, mentally, and just as far as preparation. So when we're on the field, based off of that information, we can make better decisions and inform training based off of what we're seeing as well too. I think a lot of times we tend to think that the data drives all of the decisions, but it really just helps us make better decisions.
Do you have a time where you're saying you're good and they're like, I got more, or sometimes the data shows and they're like, I'm not feeling right today. This is not right.
I think if you've been an athlete, one of my things was I probably needed someone to save me from myself. And that's where the coaching aspect comes into it. So 100%, those guys need to be saved from themselves at times.
First female head of sports science in Major League Soccer. Are you still the only one?
I think I may still be the one as far as head of sports science. So with that title, there have been a couple new females coming into the league, whether it's through athletic training. I know there's been quite a few females on that side of things, on the medical side. There's one other female strength coach as well. So there's definitely growing. I think when I first got into it, there wasn't really anyone. But it's one of those things where I think that it's important to be able to have that recognition and see those things before you know that you can actually do it.
We had Megan McCormick in at halftime, her also being one of the first head coaches for Academy. At the time, the NFL had just kind of gotten together. There, I think 12 female assistant coaches in the NFL had a roundtable together. It's cool to have the recognition, but maybe down the line, rather than being the first or being the only, it might be also cool to be one of many, because that means it's grown.
I was reminded of it when Beyonce broke into country music, which is a big thing right now. She also was quoted saying that this isn't a country album, it's a Beyonce album. I think that really resonates with this because, as a woman, I want to be known for being a good strength coach and a good sports scientist scientist. And I hope that I can see one day your sex or race or whatever it is doesn't limit what you do as a person. And I think that's really important. But it also requires us to recognize the women who have been able to pave that way and be the first to do it. And then it's possible. And then
Jan and Joan Gettemeyer, who are UMSL Hall of Famers, they were back in the day with UMSL's first women's team, where they had hand-me-downs from the men's teams. Don't even fit you right. Now we've got finally some women's sizing because it fits differently. We're not many men. I didn't know if you had any outlook on what sports science might be doing for the women's side of the game.
I worked on the women's side a couple of years ago, and one of the most confusing things for me coming into that sport, coming from the men, when we look at everything from their sleep, all the different things, when I went to the women and I asked them, do they get regular periods? And that was a question that they'd never been asked before sometimes. And that to me, I think is absolutely crazy, because there are certain aspects of women, like the studies have not been done on women as well. It's mostly been on men. And when you look at all the studies related to load management and soccer, it's
cycle
and pretty much everything. And it's all related to men. But your period affects your performance a lot of times, and maybe not directly. The research and everything all combined, it's very hard to find anything out about that.
And all those variables, I think, would lead to the way you manage injuries differently, body design, cycling.
The technology is growing with that. For example, Oura Ring now, it's the first FDA-approved device to track your temperature, track ovulation and cycle and everything like that. So the accuracy is much higher than it has been with other pieces of technology. So I think that's one of the things on the sports science side is growing, to be able to get more information and actually conduct studies on female athletes, because it is more specific to them.
I think I saw an ad for cleats coming out, being designed for a woman's foot, higher arches, narrower foot. I grew up at a time where I had to know what my men's size was in cleats, because they only gave. I'm a size 6. How about you?
Yeah, right. I think I'm a size 5,
In
which
a
is very
Mundial, I'm a 6, a 5.5 if I want to stretch it in the shower.
That's also one of the things, because the female structure, the body is different, the hips are different. And so the injuries that we tend to see on women are a little bit different as well than men. So you see way more ACLs. And I think that's one of the hot topics in the female game is season-ending injuries and a ton of ACLs and knee injuries. And that, I think, is challenging. And this is growing. But I would say without the proper support, whether it's hiring a specific staff to be able to manage that a little bit more, or having the financial support across the league, and it's certainly getting a lot better. I don't want to speak poorly of that, because I think it's growing and it is starting to get that recognition that it deserves. Whereas on the men's side, I think that type of support has been there for a long time.
You're into the outcomes and the results and the measurements. You came from a year with a crazy good team that kept you busy for a long time. What's your hopes for this year and beyond?
I mean, we certainly set the bar very high, which is a great thing. And, we have a good group of guys that's super motivated. And so I love seeing that and being able to work with them, because it makes my job a lot easier. So this year, I think we have the same hopes and the same things that we want to achieve as a team and be successful with each and every game.
That's Kelly Roderick, head of sports science at St. Louis City SC. You can see her at every practice, every game. If you pay attention and you look her up, you can probably catch her a little bit on camera at games and stuff like that. But truly, she's intrigued with the science part of it. And she says that it's not really all data, right? You don't go just by what the data says, but that is another information point, as to when somebody's off. You're probably seeing it in the data when they have a little bit more. Her funniest comment was there that the guys are never running quite as fast as they think they are. That's not necessarily their top speed, but sure enough, after practice that day, they had worked really hard. It was a Wednesday, I think, and really intense day, and they are ending practice with a sprint. And it's not a punishment sprint. It's like, oh, you lost the game, you have to sprint, like we do sometimes in the youth training side of the game. But it is to get at a certain load and to see how can they max out their speed and what percentage of that are they. And also really great to hear about how things are changing on the women's side of the game as well, and looking forward to some of those developments. She's a great mind. She's a great person to see around the field, and City is really, really lucky to have her. So happy to have her on. More to come. We're going to shift direction. We're going to head to the youth side of the game. We're going to talk a little bit about club. We're going to talk a little bit about high school. That's next on the KMOX Soccer Report.
You know, the Midwest Money slogan, isn't cash in the bank better than scrap in the drawer? This is Johnny Rabbit to tell you
Redbird Talk never stops. The Y98 St. Louis City Soccer Report continues on America's Sports Voice, KMOX.
Yep, 30 minutes of the St. Louis City Soccer Report left. Jennifer Cease here with you downtown with Kyle Sixta running the show for us. You know, I got an email this week. I am not just a person that does broadcasts for St. Louis City and for KMOX and I don't know, Soccer Mom Sunday and wherever else I'm going. I'm a soccer mom. And my 17-year-old is no longer playing, but I have 3 kids that play. They played recreational. They play competitively. Probably back in the day, I played for MISA. I'm sure we were all players of MISA at some point in time. But Missouri Youth Soccer Association got an email, and it started a little something like this. It said, clubs, coaches, parents, and competitive players, right? Because some of these kids also have email. I don't know if they read it. Mine don't. It said, it's getting to be that time of the year again that causes the most stress and confusion in competitive soccer. Tryouts. Tryouts are for competitive players only. Recreational players may participate in as many activities and teams as they choose and cannot be restricted. And the email goes on, and in order to be better than me reading it, it'd be fun to have a conversation with Nick Bichelle, executive director at MISA. Nick, you know that we talked. I love this email. I love that it comes in March because I'm not even thinking yet of tryouts. And I love that you guys are trying to head off at the pass the angst that's going to happen definitely maybe in April, but definitely by the end of May.
Yeah, some of it's started already. It's crazy. I see ID sessions out there in October. So we try to pick that time where we're going to get people to hopefully read it and understand it. And, you know, if we can help them work their way through this process and understand what they're getting into. It's a big commitment by everybody, the player, the parent, the coach, and the club. And the more information everybody has, the better.
I got to ask you, what made you, not that I haven't received communication from MISA before, I certainly have, but I don't recall getting this much of a pointed email when it comes to tryouts, and definitely this early. Was there a conversation that happened around that's like, hey, we have to like draw the wagons together and get behind this or get ahead of it maybe?
We've sent out this email in some form for the past couple of years. I don't think we've ever put it as early, but quite honestly, we've never seen the kick-arounds and ID sessions and whatever else you want to call them start so early. Yeah. So, you know, it kind of urged us to get out in front of it a little better. But it's all the feedback we get from, you know, the parents and the coaches and things like that we're trying to, you know, react and be good stewards of the game for them.
And I notice on here, you know, you said that it doesn't matter what it's called, right? Whether it's an ID session or a kick around, even if they were to call it tryout, until the tryout date, it's not official. You're allowed to pretty much do these things. Players can go. There's really no restrictions. But you give some sage advice about, you know, pre-registering and or signing on the dotted line. What are maybe some of those tips, especially I think for, gosh, if you're a wide-eyed parent with a little one that just happens to be really talented, this is probably overwhelming. Any bullet points to kind of take a look at before you head into this time of the year?
Well, you know, a lot of them is you're trying to find the right environment for your child, you know, and so you want to know, why is your child playing the sport? What are you looking for out of the sport? Remember, this is your child playing and not you. And then really spend time and get to know the teams and the clubs. And that's why, rather than saying, oh, we're not going to have kick-arounds and we're not going to have ID sessions, they're good in the right frame of mind where it gives you time to see what a club or a team or a coach is about. And that's really the big thing we're trying to say. And then realize that, you know, you're going to be signing documents with a club, especially, that you are committing to a financial agreement with them for an entire seasonal year. And there are limited opportunities for, you know, your child to change clubs. You need to ask questions of the club of what are their policies on transfers if you get in there and it's not a good fit? What is the club's viewpoint of, finding a good fit for your player? What about guest play, primary and secondary registration? Players are allowed to register on up to 2 rosters, a primary and a secondary. A lot of clubs require both those rosters to be in one club. Others not so much.
Right. Yeah. Some clubs share a little bit better, I guess, than other than other clubs.
Yeah, and that really is, and it's about sharing, and you have to communicate with these coaches and clubs and know this stuff going in, and know what the constraints are going to be on you if you have a less than perfect time, or just you find out that maybe it isn't exactly what you thought it was. But it's all about the details, and it's all about putting the time to learn it.
Yeah, and I don't know if you said it here in particular, but I thought when MISA is called to mitigate, right? When it's not a fit and it didn't work out the way we thought it was, either from the coach side or club side or parent and kid side, is there a common theme that you find?
Normally, it's that people haven't asked the questions. They have had a misunderstanding about, how much playing time their child is going to get, which team their child is going to be on. When you sign with a club, a lot of times you're not finding out what team you're on, or you can move.
Yeah, you might be in the pool.
Yeah, in the pool, you can be on the A team, the B team, the C team. That movement can happen during the year based on your development and things like that. And really it's just finding a spot where your players enjoying the game and getting better while they play and advancing at their own pace. Not every kid is built the same. There's a very few kids that are ever going to play at the very highest levels. And we all want that of our children because they are our most precious commodities. But that's just not the reality, and we always have to keep a perspective about ourselves.
Yeah. When you find that it works well, when clubs are doing the right amount of communication and parents and players are finding the right fit, what's happening? What's the magic behind making the right selection, whether you're on either side of the equation?
Yeah, and again, it's talking to the people who are going to be responsible for your child's development. Understanding what their philosophy is on training. Maybe that doesn't match up with, maybe you can't get to 4 trainings a week, or maybe you don't want to. Or maybe, the 2 trainings your coach has isn't enough for you. Understand what playing time is going to be about and what the values are of the programming. And then, really you have to make sure that, there's some sense of holistic development where it's not just the soccer field. I mean, this is a team sport. It's teaching life lessons and so much more goes into this game than just what happens on that field. And, to challenge a player means that a player is going to make a mistake, and how's the player dealt with when that happens? And how does the player deal with that when it happens? Because it's going to happen, and we all have to be ready for that.
Yeah, and you mentioned here too in the email that, some clubs, when you're coming, right, they need a little information about you, right? They might know your kid's name, what's their preferred position, what are they coming kind of for? But you make it very clear that this is not, signing on the dotted line, that happens at a very specific time in a specific way, right?
Right. So every year, every district, there's 4 districts in Missouri. Every year the district meets, it picks a tryout date. Normally, it's a very easy decision. It's the day after our Missouri State Cup ends, which is, tryouts are Sunday, June 9th. That's when they start. That's when the gates unlock. Your player is now a free agent. He can go anywhere he wants. He can do anywhere, go anywhere, do anything. And that's when you're really free to look at everything. And being prepared for that to happen by attending some ID sessions or some kick-arounds, that's great. But that door unlocks on June 9th. And that's when you really can go out there and, have your child ready to be able to go out and compete with kids they don't know.
and
right.
understand that they're under an enormous amount of stress. So let's not put them under any more. It's all of us, have a soccer background, and we want to believe in the things we do, but let your child go down the path they choose, and really support them. Tell them you love watching them play. That's the biggest message.
That's never a bad thing, right, Nick? Like when in doubt, that's the thing we can all say.
Right. Exactly. I mean, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
It's so important, and I think a lot of times we get away from that. I mean, we are given such a great gift to watch our children play and develop, and especially if you're passionate about the game, it's such a great thing. But we can't let ourselves get so wrapped up that we forget it's a game. Every kid isn't going to be in the World Cup, and the whole idea is go out there, have a wonderful time, enjoy yourself, and see where it goes in the end. It may not go anywhere.
Thanks, Nick Michelle, Executive Director for MISA. Appreciate your time today, and I guess we'll probably see you somewhere on the pitch.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jen. It's great talking to you.
You too. That was Nick. And you can find out more if you go to www.missourisoccer.org and go under their tryout dates. You can actually find all the things that Nick just talked about that was in that email if you missed it, about all the rules, about all the dates in place. If you have somebody currently playing competitive soccer, or maybe a little one that's looking to play some competitive soccer, you can take a look. And they also have access to find out clubs around the area as well. More to come. That was the club side. We're going to talk the high school side, specifically the best 11 of high school side. We'll tell you more on the other side of this break on KMOX.
Jules on Hampton
the dude doesn't tell me, by the way, we have cameras on, which is very important. That was not cool. But he did say that, we kind of pulled out. He'd been talking a little bit, and I'd seen the St. Louis Champions League, but it was the first time that I had really been paying attention to St. Louis's best 11. So I know you're the coach at Ladue. Kind of tell me a little bit about how this kind of got going, and how is it, if at all, related to the Champions League part of high school?
Yeah, sure. So this was an idea I kind of had over the summer. I'm a big proponent of high school athletics and high school soccer. I've been coaching in high schools now for over a decade, and I was watching, looking at the MLS Best 11. I was like, what? We should have something like this with our high school. We have so many great players. And I think a lot of people they follow the high school game because there's that,
Sure.
There's the connection with your school and your community.
I was a Eureka Wildcat, Dave.
There you go. So
Fenton didn't have Summit yet.
Right. For me, it was kind of like, why can't we just do something like the MLS does with their Best 11, where we can highlight some of these just amazing athletes that are playing the high school game. So we started in the fall. We probably got, I'd have to look back, but maybe like 5 or 6 weeks in the fall. And it was a pretty good success, I'd say, once I kind of got it rolling. And then really I went kind of all out here for the spring. What I hope the listeners really understand about this is I am not picking this. This is not, Dave Ehrenberg's Best 11. So all of the metro area coaches, Illinois side, Missouri side, all can nominate players. For this first week, we had over 30 players nominated.
Wow.
And then all of the coaches vote on who is the most deserving of the Best 11. So I think it's just a really cool way. Like when kids make that list, it's a really big honor because there's so many good players, from our area. So it's something that's kind of all come together now. And I think, with you guys kind of helping with the exposure on it, the Soccer Dad Pod has been just great about pumping up high school soccer too. It's all coming together. So.
Yeah, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of back in the day, before we had social media and you had to only go to the St. Louis Post-Dispatch or your suburban journals. It reminds me of being picked for conference teams. It also reminds me of the North-South game, being picked for something like that. And is that kind of feel also?
Yeah, and I mean, I remember I was playing back when the Suburban Journal was the thing. You'd open up the Suburban Journal, you'd hope to see your name in the paper. You're
That's
like,
right.
those days are gone now. No one's. I was like one of the last of the dinosaurs. I still get the paper. So, but those days are done. But that was kind of that did kind of help spur this idea along. We, more ways to get these kids in a more digital format. Some recognition.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, JB and I talked a little bit today I think he's posted one. We talked to Langley Mayers from St. Joe and Audrey Smith from Fort Zumwalt South. They each had a game today. So we got them real quick right after school. And they were just, the smiles on their faces and pleased. And also I loved that they took a look at who else was on, and they know all these players know each other. They either play against or with club ball and high school, and to kind of know that they looked around the pitch and went, God, if you really put us all together, we'd have a really good team.
And it's cool for me as a high school coach. I don't always know which club teams the girls are playing on, so I had no idea that Langley and Audrey played on the same team.
Really?
Same club team.
Yeah, because they're both with Gallagher, Alex Pfeiffer's team to be frank.
Yeah.
So
I mean, just from listening to that interview, that was cool news to me. So, and what also is cool about this Best 11, I mean, you can win multiple times. So just like the MLS, this isn't like a one and done. So every week, if you're killing it in the high school game, you can win again. So
yeah, and I glance around, I see Windsor, Imperial, Ladue, Duchesne, Timberland, Hazelwood West, Villa Duchesne, St. Dom, Howard Central, St. Joe Academy, Fort Zumwalt South, and Pacific. So I went back to front. Really a representation of soccer around the area. Was that intentional?
Well, again, it has nothing to do with me. So this is what the coaches are. This is the coaches that are nominating and the coaches that are voting. So it's very democratic. But I think to your point, how cool is it? You have such a good blend of private and public and big schools and small schools And really, this is also the Metro East side. Now, on this first one, there wasn't an Illinois player, but there's so many good players
But they're
on the
still
East
in the
side.
mix,
It would
right?
be-
They're in the mix.
Yeah.
Illinois is in the mix. Okay, good.
Yes. So I don't want the Illinois listeners to be like, where's the Illinois players? Because I'm 100% sure they're going to be represented, coming down the line here. So,
What is?
but yeah,
oh,
I
go ahead.
just think it's so cool just to see the different representation because we have great players all over the place.
Yeah. What is the process, by the way? I mean, I'm sure you can't get to all the games. You can't. I know there's like a VO camera at almost any youth game, it seems like anymore. Is it video?
Right.
Is it just vote ticks? How, is it ratings?
I would say most high schools now do videotape games. So while we don't get to see all the teams, obviously we do a fair amount of scouting. So, I'm able to see a lot of players. But in terms of the process for voting, coaches nominate and we look at what teams have done that week. What did those players individually do that week? Did a girl score a hat trick? Did a goalie make saves and PKs? So that really, and it really comes down to what happened that week. I didn't want this thing to become who are your best players, and we're just voting on the best players. Like, you have to have done something in the past week to make the best 11.
Okay. So, which is therefore why you could show up again. And you
That's
may,
right.
and you may not show up again. What,
That's right.
so you've done it a little bit this in the fall and then for the girls, and it seems to be received pretty widely. I mean, I keep getting tagged in the reshares of players getting excited about what's the future of this? What's the growth look like for spring and then maybe in the future?
It's been amazing. I mean, it's a pretty new thing. I only have, I'm running the STL Best 11 Twitter, and I think I have something like 250 followers. It's very modest. That first tweet I put out about the Best 11 for the girls got over 15,000 views.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
I mean, obviously, and I've talked to JB. JB's very good about, digital media and all this stuff. I mean, there's interest here. There people would like to see the people in their community being represented. So I think it's going to grow and it's going to be something that really kids are looking forward to trying to make. And, a little competition, like, can I get back on that list or can I make that list? And again, you could be a fresh, you talked about the different schools. You could be different grades.
Yeah, that's
There
what
was
one of the girls said today. There's a freshman on there.
Freshman from St. Dominic that made the list, sophomores, juniors, seniors. So again, it's open to all. And the soccer in St. Louis is just tremendous. So, I want this to be something that if you make this list, how cool is that? It's that coaches from around the area are recognizing you for your accomplishments that past week.
Well, thanks, Dave, and best of luck to the Best 11 the rest of the season.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was Dave Ehrenberg, Ladue High School coach. He runs the Best 11. You can find it on Twitter. It's in concert with St. Louis High School Champions League. Have fun with that. Thanks to all of our guests today for the St. Louis City Soccer Report. City takes on Real Salt Lake. Another report next Thursday on KMOX.
If you're thinking about doing a little home improvement, especially one that you don't have to do the installation, think about